Hello, this is the 10th video I've produced on the subject of the European Union and the referendum in which I shall vote in 2 days from now. I don't usually vote, certainly not for British politicians, because I don't believe the quality that we require is available to us in Westminster. But as I said the other day, if I had to, I would crawl to the polling station in order to vote to leave. I was born before the Second World War. In fact, I've always said that Hitler took one look at me and invaded Poland. Not entirely true, I'm sure you understand, but I've always said that. So I grew up appreciating Britain, particularly England, of course, because that's where I was born and it's where I live. So I'm particularly unhappy about having to tell you, which I think I've already done on a previous occasion, that I voted in 1975 in favour of our staying in the common market as we then understood it. So I've witnessed the lies of Edward Heath, who I remember thinking at the time was a complete idiot to believe that we, British that is, required a leg up from other European countries in order to further our industrial progress. It was, of course, nonsense at the time, and the reasons he gave were lies. We were subsequently lied to by Harold Wilson, and everybody acknowledges this now. Even Shirley Williams, for example, who said in an interview, apparently conducted around about the time of the 1975 referendum, that Harold Wilson's lies to the public were a brilliant ploy. They were very clever. So even somebody who presents herself as a paragon of virtue is, like most of our political class, in favour of lies to the public. Since then, since Harold Wilson that is, we've watched an endless group of people lying. In fact, today even, it's been said by one of David Cameron's advisors that he was told, if he hasn't got the intelligence, or if he didn't have the intelligence to see that it was true, it's amazing, that no matter what happened, while we were part of the European Union, we could not control immigration into our country. Now, in fact, I don't want to deal with those aspects of things because I believe they're all red herrings. Nobody knows the truth of what's going to happen in the future, albeit that it seems fairly obvious that our industry can, instead of being destroyed by the EU and our politicians, of course, will be reborn. There will be some problems, I'm absolutely sure, as indeed there will be from our staying, should we decide to do so, inside the so-called union. So we've seen a succession of liars, and it really seems irrelevant to actually consider these people because they're beneath contempt. Too many of the British people actually believe their politicians, as indeed did I, in 1975 when Harold Wilson said it was good for us to be part of this free trade area. I've never doubted that being part of a free trade area was a good idea, but this particular one, which had got, even then, every intention of becoming a political union with a common currency and one single centralised government that would control us all and submit us to, as it now turns out, as we now understand, to becoming yes, I think I can say slaves of a corporate European structure. Everybody knows, and I've mentioned this before, that there are families in America who were Nazi sympathisers, some of whom live in England, who are totally in favour of handing democracy over to corporate government. In other words, they have no interest whatsoever in the people. In fact, the people get in the way insofar as they are not required as labour to produce the goods and services that they wish to have free and uninterrupted ability to offer, in inverted commas, offer to the entire world. So as we approach the referendum itself, I have to say that my biggest concern of all is the quality and structure of British government. It's gone further and further downhill until we've got, you'll forgive me with my seniority for describing these as boys who've absolutely no idea what the world's all about. They know that if they control the British people via the EU, they'll be granted positions of power in the country, namely there'll be our government. They won't listen to anything we have to say. This will be dictated to them from Brussels. Well, by, as I've mentioned before, a significant cartel of these multinational banks and companies whose intention it is to control the world. Now, that sounds like a crank speaking, doesn't it? But this is the way it is. That's what it's all about. And that's why apparently intelligent people can be seen clubbing or gathering together to lie to us, and why I fear that too many of the British population will actually believe. The truth of the matter will come home to roost. There's no question it will, and it will be too late then, in many ways, for us to do anything about it. The only possible way of then changing the status quo will be some form of uprising. Now, what form that will take will depend upon the circumstances and how far down the road we actually are at the point where we say enough's enough. As I said, I was born before the Second World War, and so won't be around to see the results of the uprising. But I still believe there's perhaps a chance that the British people are bright enough to vote to leave the EU, leaving us free, the people, because we have the power, if we opt to use it, to change the way we're governed. Never mind about the EU, to change the way we're governed from Westminster and Whitehall. Now, I sincerely, I know that people don't queue up to look at my videos on this subject. As I said, I've produced 9 previously, and they've hardly broken records in terms of the length of the queues of people waiting to listen and watch them. But I won't give up because of that. Those of us of my generation don't give up easily. That's why on Thursday you'll find that a vast number of senior people in the country, in terms of years and experience, will be totally opposed to the idea of staying in a so-called union. It's a complete nonsense and will remain so. I won't restate the dire consequences of staying in, because you won't believe me if you won't believe, or if you're not, excuse me, if you're not convinced to vote to leave. But this will probably be the last video that I'll make on this subject, but at least it's there. I've stated my opinions. I've even written a novel on how we set about the corruption in the British establishment to change the way we're governed. I do hope that on Thursday I will be able to produce another video to say thank you to those people who saw the logic of doing what is obviously right. These days, saying to somebody that something is obvious, I mean, I saw today somewhere that somebody said that people who are in favour of leaving are lying. Lying about what? Losing our democracy, having no control, not being able to throw politicians out who don't treat the people as they should. You know, all these things are completely ludicrous, and the big fear I have is that the very nature of our country will change beyond recognition. In fact, in the sequel to the novel, incidentally it's called Wilder's Women, and I narrated it as an audiobook, and it's available for anybody who wants to read it. In that, the sequel to it, I've called Weatherby's Dilemma at this stage as a working title. It may well end being called, it depends on circumstances and the referendum result, but it may well end being called Area 12, which is what I have called Great Britain in the eyes of the EU power brokers and bureaucrats at some point in the future. So I fear very much that my grandchildren may well find themselves living in Area 12, once Great Britain. That fills me with horror, and I've done as much as I feel I'm able to convince people that they shouldn't allow that to happen. Because if you believe otherwise, if you believe that there's a democracy ahead of us and we'll gain a huge advantage from what lies ahead within the EU, then I'm sorry, but obviously you don't understand the reality of our situation. So I look forward to Thursday. Well, Wednesday first and then Thursday. And I'd like to thank you all for those of you who've taken the trouble to look at my 10 videos on YouTube dealing with this subject, because everything within it is heartfelt and, in my view, the truth and fact of the case. Thank you.